Robert, thanks for taking the time today here to chat with me about Lazy Dog, about delivery, about Loop, amongst other things. Um, Maybe let's quickly get started with a little bit about you, Robert. So tell us about uh, how you have sort of navigated your journey into leading, amongst many things, delivery at Lazy Dog. But would love a quick overview of your journey.
Yeah, just broadly, and my background is really all in restaurants. I'm very much an operational CFO, and my journey came through operations, and then I moved into the corporate office of Bloomin' Brands, and I got the opportunity to work on many brands over their life in different places in their their journey and their scale, and then came to Lazy Dog almost 10 years ago now, a little over 9 years ago, came to Lazy Dog and had the opportunity to help grow this brand from 16 units to up over 50 units now across the United States and 8 states. And the you know the evolution of delivery has been fun. We were early adopters as a company of delivery. We actually had the opportunity to meet with many of these founders of these delivery companies at a very early stage. I met with Tony in San Francisco at his offices, and when we first talked about bringing on DoorDash as a partner, as one of our partners. And at that time it was pretty straightforward and easy to understand. And it was a conversation of what's commission, right? And that was basically it. How much are you going to charge me for commission, and can I make the model work? And it traditionally then at that point was owned by marketing, and it was all about just making sure we had good photography on the website and very, very straightforward. And where the need for Loop came in is as the business model of delivery became more and more dynamic, more uh, complex, there was a lot more, I would say, finance involved, a lot more analytics, and it became less and less, I would say, traditional marketing, if you will. Marketing plays a major role in that, but really it became really understanding how these different programs worked, how did the overall business model work, um, and that's where that like a recognition of needing more visibility into understanding all of these moving components, so then we can make better decisions as a business to make sure that the business was profitable, which ultimately I think works well for both us and the delivery partners, because if it's profitable, then I'm going to want to do more of it, right? And so that's sort of a win-win situation where I understand my side from a profitability and sales, then ultimately benefits them as well. And so that part has been like sort of the evolution of that partnership, and then I would say the third-party management as well.
That makes a lot of sense, Robert. Was there an event, or what was this point of realization where you started to see the game shift? I'm sure it was a little bit, but then a lot after some time. Was there a moment where you sort of took a step back and said, "Hey, there's a lot going on here, that needs a lot more attention"?
Yeah, I mean, it started when the funny part was it started where I wouldn't have expected it to, and that was actually on the accounting side. And so much is driven by the accountant, and my person that was in charge of sort of handling the reconciliation, she was really struggling to make sense of the different fees and costs coming out of our account, and the recognition that, well, really some of these things aren't commission. This is marketing dollars, or these are discounts and guest refunds that went back, and there's all these different financial metrics that we really didn't have a place for in our P&L. And then we realized, wow, there's a lot more here. And then we started spending more and more time sort of trying to unwind each and every single month where these costs should go into the P&L. And I realized I just didn't have a full picture of what was going on. The conversation about commissions was such a small part, but then even within the commission line, you had, are these, Dash Pass members or non-Dash Pass members? And there's lots of complexity there. And is this a guest discount, or is this a marketing fee? And I think that's where it started, and recognizing the complexity. And so when we started to think about what we needed as a solution to this, it really started with accounting because there was just this like screaming problem that we weren't doing a very good job of putting these costs in place. Or I would say we did a pretty good job, but it took a lot of work to get there. And that was the recognition that this business had gotten a lot more complex than what it once was, and we needed some help. And I think like the way that you explained it to me, I think was the best way. And it was actually the way that I shared internally and I share still with others is, we have Olo, which does a great job of integrating, right? This is yours, right? Integrating everything within to the point of sale for these third-party platforms, but we really don't have that system that integrates it into the home office and the ERP and the other systems that we have. And that's where like the Loop solution came into play because it really was. It brought it all into the home office. The business grew to a scale that it required better tools to sort of manage than we once had. And for a business that runs lots of restaurants across multiple states with lots of delivery partners and lots of programs, it was a necessity, not a want.
Fantastic, point of view there. In terms of um, effectively making delivery a deeper part of the home office, and making sure that you're taking a more integrated view as against it just being like this secondary thing that nobody pays attention to. Um, and that's sort of, I guess, speaking to a hidden trend, Robert, in terms of how delivery became a larger part of your business over time. And potentially when it was small, it was negligible, but at some point maybe it became big. Of course, it comes with a lot of complexity. But maybe talk to me a bit about your reflections. I mean, with Lazy Dog, almost a decade there for you. How does this fit in, right? Like, where does delivery fit into the overall business? How did you see it evolve over the past decade, and what do you think is going to happen over the next few years? And what sort of the conversation with the executive team there over at Lazy Dog about how you view delivery as a whole, and how important it is to your business?
For us, where I see delivery moving is I think ultimately, I think there's going to be more information sharing about these guests ultimately, because when you look at our systems and what we're going to do with CDP to market to our guests effectively and communicate with our guests, and then also the data that our third-party partners have for us to sort of better talk to those guests, I think there's going to be a tighter integration between that in-restaurant experience and that off-premise experience. I think the amount of resources that could go into this channel as a marketplace to both bring awareness to a brand like ours is critically important. When looking at the marketplace and be able to identify these guests as either a first time guest, potential lapse guests, and start to get really thoughtful about how we communicate in different situations with guests at different points in their journey with us as a brand, I think it's something so far beyond just bringing food to somebody's door in a convenient way. And I think that better understanding of meeting the guest needs, bringing awareness to a brand is where I see a lot of the growth potential with these partnerships over time, and better integration of that in-restaurant experience and that off-premise experience is sort of being united. And I know that some brands probably have had varying degrees of information sharing across those things, but I think that's going to be a broader portion of the industry on a go forward basis. So I think of delivery very much as a way to drive engagement with your brand.
Love that. Um, how would you view the growth and margin profiles for this part of your revenue relative to the others? Are there things that you look at the same way? Are there differences?
I think we are still, I won't say early innings. I think we're in the middle innings of understanding the margin differences in this channel versus others. I think it's also my responsibility as a CFO to make sure that my business is profitable regardless of how the guest chooses to use me, right? I should not choose and dictate how they want to enjoy Lazy Dog. I should make sure that in every channel that which they do choose, it is a profitable transaction for us as a brand. And so that's kind of the ethos going into it. I think where I where I see it headed is really maybe a little bit in sort of demand management, where it has greater flexibility. Whereas in maybe at Saturday at 6 p.m., the way at which I market the brand and drive incremental sales and transactions in third party delivery, maybe that should be different than Monday at noon, right? And I think ultimately, like working in harmony with those things could work better for both partners, because I'm sure at Saturday at 6 p.m. on the delivery side, it's probably hard for them to find enough drivers and to be able to meet their service standards. So I think ultimately helping with demand planning, demand smoothing, so that we could drive great transactions. And some of the things that your team's brought to light for me even is thinking about, uh, you know, how to manage maybe inventory if you're and different promote different items at different moments in time. I think is a really exciting way that things could move into the future as well, and just being more thoughtful about what you're promoting, what you're featuring, and that be a little more dynamic than it is today. I think all of those factors I think tie back to this sort of like demand management is where I can see this going in the future.
Love that. That's amazing. Um, in terms of your perspectives around operations, Robert, I think our teams have engaged quite a bit on that front. Um, how do you view delivery sort of impacting your day-to-day operations at the store, at the restaurant, uh, in terms of the lift, or making sure that the customers still have a great experience even though they're not in a Lazy Dog in person? What does it take to get it right? Because you guys are absolutely really showing with your numbers that you're doing a great job. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but it looks like you guys are doing something right there.
Thank you for that, because the team works really, really hard at it, and we take it very serious. I come from a point of view that I believe operators inherently want to do a great job in running their restaurants, right? I don't think anybody intentionally chooses to fail their guest in some way or another. I think the challenge for operators oftentimes is either having too much information that doesn't point them to where the opportunity is, or just not having information at all. And I think what's helpful and what we've been able to capture from some of the tools in Loop is understanding where the opportunities lie and giving very specific um, details to our operators such that they can have the most impact on the, those operational KPIs within the business. Um, and frankly, just having access to the information, right? I mean, some of this stuff is because so many of us operate on multiple platforms. It doesn't matter how good the tools are in DoorDash or in Uber separately. And I'm sure, I've seen their platforms. They're good platforms. They're really insightful. But our operators are not going to individually log on to these different platforms and then try to tie these two things together to notice the trends upon one KPI that they're sort of have opportunities lie. And so I think the aggregation of that information, so you can boil up the most important three things for that operator to work on and be very clear about those three things that they're focusing on, is great. At the same time, what we've learned is some of it's on our side. It could be on how we menu something that's causing a problem, and how we let guests modify or not modify something within our menu, or items that were just inherently problematic, and then we needed a better system for. It's like, we had opportunity with drinks for a long time. We forget drinks, and now we have a new process in place to make sure that drinks are never forgotten. That wasn't an operator problem. It was a systems problem that the tool also helped point it out. And so sometimes it's us at the corporate office sort of looking at our systems and making changes to make it easier for the operators to be successful. And other times it's about an operator knowing where to focus.
Love that. What you mentioned about drinks, that's super interesting. What did you do there?
Well, I mean, we took we changed how the chits were printed, and so that way they could see exactly that there were some drinks with it, and we created some check boxes on those, and some very simple changes. But there was like a visual cue that like this ticket has a drink on it. Watch out, right? And it sort of brought awareness to that, and we made some changes, and we substantially eliminated that as a problem.
Super insight there. Yeah, and these nudges and small cues make such a big difference. And I think the framing that you sort of set here, which is operators want to do a great job, they just need the help.
Yeah.
That means that's accessible, that's easy for them to not go out of their way. And probably the best way to do that is in a ticket. But there's so many other mechanisms there that you can engage in as well. Super insightful there.
Yeah, and I think your reporting philosophy is we learn a lot from that, and we use that internally as well, because it's about bringing forth the insight for people to then take the action, right? And then sometimes yours is actually even taking it almost a step further and even helping with the action. But like that's where we really want to get, because there's so many dashboards, and if you had time to stare at them all, you could probably find where the opportunity lies. But I like in that the reporting that we put together, and that's in the dashboards is really much like, here is the insight, here's the thing that you should focus in on, and that makes it just so much easier.
Love that. That's amazing, Robert. Um, so let's talk about Loop. How have we been doing? Have we solved some, many, most of your problems? Tell me about how we have sort of embedded inside the Lazy Dog family and alleviated or helped solve some of these problems for you.
Look, I think the platform originated for me and trying to find a solution to an accounting problem, right? And we as a brand had found a solution um, to that, and I looked to see if we could then better that solution, and that's how this all started. And that sort of was foundational to this relationship, right? Do I understand enough of our financial data to make sure that this is getting properly booked on a monthly basis? It was a very real business problem, right? People were frustrated within the team, and I wanted to help remove those frustrations. And I think we've made a ton of progress at sort of solving those pieces. And I know that, occasionally we find something that is as like, oh, we didn't contemplate that in the Loop platform. And that's what's been great, is like the adaptability of the team to sort of like reflect on that, figure out how to make it better, and sort of been responsive to sort of elevating or changing the solution. And we've had that in some of the accounting reconciliation pieces. So that was sort of the foundational. We needed to be able to do that right, right? And then the second area that we really explored deeply was with operational KPIs. And we had a little visibility into this from solutions that we had created on our own and bringing in some sort of, star ratings and missing and correct and whatnot. But I think understanding that to a much deeper level and helping the um, the teams that were responsible for this find where the big areas of opportunity. And then we started to mine in new areas. We started to learn in IT. We started to learn that, hey, when we go and take a restaurant offline because of a temporary closure, the way in which we do that was actually negatively impacting our standings with our third-party partners. We didn't know this. And so we started learning things systematically that we could do differently through this partnership. And then the biggest, and I would say the most valuable, because all of this is about driving sales, the biggest and the most valuable, and was the area that I probably had the least um, understanding of the opportunity in when we started, was really the marketing side, right? Of understanding campaign performance, understanding how we were generating revenue on the platform, and what was our true return on ad spend, I mean, I learned about double dip rates, right? And understanding how frequently that, our guests were using more than one promotion. And then I also learned about, one transaction being attributed to multiple programs ultimately and sort of impacting the stated ROIs of those programs. And I think through understanding that better, we've made huge strides in really having clear visibility of program profitability, promotions, and then through the platform, be able to sort of test and learn and do through evaluation playground, which I look at pretty much on a daily basis of how programs are doing on either a week over week or a year over year basis, has really helped us continue to marginally improve the business more and more, such that we're actually willing to spend on a platform that which we had kind of said we're not going to spend anymore, right? Well, the reality was is we were able to get a lot more for those dollars, and the return on ad spend is really easy to understand, and the attribution is super direct. And that piece has been like the biggest unlock of both value and understanding for us, and and really it was what we're going to continue to ride for quite a while and see it as a just a permanent new way of doing business on the platform. And um, and yeah, so those I think those are some of the biggest ones. You know, get yeah, just that test and learn piece.
Love that. That was super comprehensive, and I don't think I could have said that better than you did, Robert, in terms of taking that phase-wise approach to actually looking at delivery as a piece. And we talk about measure, protect, and grow. And I think you said that very beautifully in terms of getting the accounting piece, making sure you have that instrumentation in place, and then improving operations. And now you're ready to sort of grow and invest in all the right ways. And I think you're set up super well. Um, and needless to say, I mean, we look at about 9,000 restaurant locations today, and Lazy Dog's sort of a very strong outlier, especially at your size, in terms of how deeply you have embraced delivery and how thoughtful you are about getting all of these pieces right. Because the product and the solution can do whatever it does, unless there is that culture in the organization of bringing the technology in the right way and embracing it. The success would be limited otherwise. um, what advice would you have for um, brand leaders, right? CFOs, CMOs, CEOs that are starting to uh, you said this was the middle innings. Maybe they're in the early innings of delivery, right? Of starting to figure it out. What are your lessons from having played a couple of these innings and coming where you are? What do you typically say? Probably a younger operator, right, or maybe a 20 locations that's aspiring to 50, and folks that are in the earlier innings of delivery. What should they do right? What were your biggest learnings, and what's your advice for them?
I think for the advice that I would give is really looking at how much time and energy is going into managing it in the way that you are today, and whether that's pulling reports down, trying to do a bank reconciliation, or your operators going to different places to understand how they're performing in a platform, and really try to assign a true cost to that. And it's hard to do sometimes, and oftentimes if it's hard to measure, or it's hard to measure, you assign it a value of zero, and the value is not zero, right? That time that operator is spending doing some of these things to try to understand what they should be doing different in delivery has a cost. It's just hard to measure. Or that at time that your accountant spending trying to reconcile the financials at the end of the month. And the conversation that I have with other CFOs that I've talked to about, sort of coming into this space is like, if you assign a value to that, the business case for implementing software like this becomes very easy, because all of a sudden, like, that goes away, this comes on, and you're at a pretty good spot with no other benefit, right? And then you get to start to play into you know, the next level, right? And that next level is really about understanding your guest more deeply, understanding patterns within the platforms, understanding where your growth opportunities are, understanding how you can drive growth in these channels that maybe you thought were stagnant. Who are you driving growth with, and whatnot. And so that's where like this huge unlock. But even if you don't, if you're not ready for that, it doesn't mean you're not ready for the rest of it, because removing just the base level frustration of managing 3PD today is sort of get you into a good place. Um, and so that's sort of how I position it with most people, is like the benefits from the marketing side becomes highly incremental to the equation and makes it a pretty easy business case to sort of tackling this in a new way. And there's likely things that you're missing today, whether it be from attribution of cost or opportunities within in the program, just because it's inherently difficult to understand the um, the costs within these channels. Um, so I think that's most of it. I mean, I think the other piece that's interesting with people coming on is um, the team at Loop is ahead of the curve when it comes to reporting and how they think about information sharing. And and it's a little bit uncomfortable depending on where you're at in your data journey. And so sort of getting yourself like comfortable with looking at information in a new and fresh way, because it is sort of I would say at the front end of what is possible with smart insights from reporting. And it took me a little bit to make sure I understood how all the moving pieces. But now, once I would say speak the language, I realized the importance of sort of approaching a lot of the reporting in the way that the team has, of this idea of sort of looking at engage and looking at grow and looking at these different concepts and how it was broken down. It now makes a lot of sense. But initially, it comes off as like this is different. Um, and so that's something for people to be aware of as they look at this. It's on the front edge about how to think about data and information to drive action within your business.
Love that. Um, and how do you see that kind of a difference in the way that the data is presented, Robert, um, sort of accruing to the brand advantage and to the channel advantage for delivery itself? Because the reason I ask is oftentimes we are trying to go deep into the world of point of sale and other aspects of the business. And we don't feel that the data there is as rich as it's in delivery, right?
Yep,
It's
it's true.
There's so much attribution, there are so many relationships between the different entities, and it's honestly, an engineer's delight to sort of put everything together and run to you with the insights that we found. Um, how do you reflect on that, especially as it relates to the iterations that you're talking about, right? You move faster, you make the business a little bit better every week, right? On this side of the world, whereas maybe not so much on the rest of it.
Mhm.
And when you reconcile that broadly with how fast delivery has been growing over the past decade, 2015, maybe delivery in the entire country was a $5 billion business. And today it's a $150 billion business, um, across all the brands, across all restaurants. And, depending on the brand, you have anything from 5 to 40% of their entire revenue coming from delivery. What does this mean more broadly for the restaurant industry, right? And the question to sort of summarize is the ability to sort of consume this data well, iterate fast, and be better, and help operators sort of execute on their day-to-day better and target customers better, so on and so forth, relative to the rest of the channels. How do you think this is going to compound, over the upcoming years, and how should brand leaders be ready for that?
Well, I think it's safe to say that we're not in a post-COVID situation where all of a sudden, this is going to go away, right? And this is not a thing that's, here to stay, and people are going to go back to, picking up the majority of their food, right? I think people have recognized that delivery is a core part of how they're going to use restaurants here on out. I also believe that as we as an industry get smarter with the channel, we're going to help to bring down cost in many ways out of the channel. And therefore, that creates greater accessibility because obviously the third-party channel is inherently more expensive, and it always will be. But I think as those costs come down, so I believe that there's opportunity for continued growth in this channel because of that. I think for brands that as they're looking at this and not and I think how do I say without I don't want to sound in a negative way, but if you're sort of on the sidelines and you don't real or thinking that this is going to sort of not be a major influence of guest behavior, I think there's significant risk to your brand in that. And that like there is a lot of people that are loyal to these platforms that are discovering brands through these platforms or discovering a cuisine type. There's several things that in Lazy Dog that we sell disproportionately high online and third party than we do in restaurant. And we were trying to figure that out. And then we realized, wow, that's a keyword that people are searching for and off premise. And they're finding us and discovering our brand because we have this particular item. And I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to reveal any of our, our fun stuff. But but people are discovering us because of that, right? And that's a guest that never would have found us otherwise, right? And so I think it is a permanent part of our marketplace. It's a part of the marketplace that I think is going to continue to grow. I think you're seeing how robotics are sort of impacting delivery in some marketplace, and so I think that's going to impact it and bring down the cost. And so I think as people grow their businesses, this is a new permanent part. It's just like a day part. This is a day part. You participate in this day part as any other, and you want to make sure that you're doing well financially in this day part, and that's how I would look at third party delivery going forwards.
Love that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you have been, um, especially with the success that Lazy Dog as a brand is seeing on marketplaces. I think you've been rewarded well for that perspective, for that stance, where not by just virtue of the revenue that comes from these marketplaces, it's discovery, it's brand discovery, it's where
Discovery awareness is huge.
awareness.
It's
Yeah,
huge.
it's where a lot of people do their first interactions, first transactions with the brand, and it might be a little bit potentially extreme to say, but you're actually missing out on a big part of like the customer base if you're not taking a very proactive stance, right, on these marketplaces. And I think that's sort of where we are today, and we see that difference, Robert, in terms of uh, how the brand psyche and their approach to delivery has sort of this, uh, you know, uh, disproportionate impact on their position, in that marketplace. Everything from operational excellence to the way they look at margins, even the way that they invest in growth, right? And it's I like to say that and very recently I heard Uber CEO talk about this on stage too, which is that which I thought was an interesting framing, which is there are very few brands today, or rather there are no brands that are growing that are not on delivery, right? Like it's not possible for you to grow as a brand if you're not going and acquiring a whole set of customers or be visible. Now it might not be even like 5% of your revenue, but it's the part where people are going and discovering new items and doing item searches and category searches, and your brand shows up by virtue of you just being good at serving other customers, and they sort of begin that journey with the brand. So
Yeah,
um,
and it's an immediate. The thing that's interesting about our brand, and in like look, in quick casual maybe fast casual maybe a little bit different, or in quick serve, but if somebody sees my you know an Instagram post from us or something on TikTok and they're like, wow, Lazy Dog, that's super interesting, that looks amazing, I want to try that, they might not go and get in their car and go drive to us because that there's a lot of friction in that transaction, but there's some immediate ability to go get an order from DoorDash. And so even if you know your marketing in these channels to drive awareness of your brand, it still may show up in a third party channel. But if you weren't there, that transaction's lost because that guest had, in that moment, had the desire to experience your brand and you weren't there to fulfill that need. That's it. You may have lost that opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, that's very very well put. Any other thoughts or comments, Robert, that you'd like to make?
I think things that were like unexpected is how understanding like lifetime value of menu items and looking at guests across different items, that the first time item, the second, the person that ordered this, the second and the third, and just things like that from the platform that were not even things that I realized that we needed. I mean, or would be available to us that have had positive impacts on our business. And those factoring into even like evaluating what we're going to change on the menu in print in the restaurant, because it's like, wow, this item is really powerful of driving repeat visits on third-party delivery, and we would imagine in restaurant. And so even if you don't yet have the capabilities to have that insight in your four walls, getting it from a third-party platform is really helpful when it comes to things like menu development. And then I think just the influence on our internal processes, seeing how like the platform presents information has been pretty significant. We have we have reevaluated how much information and how we share information with our operators based on some of the things that we've seen as a best-in-class example coming from the Loop platform, and so it's influenced us in that way as well. And those were sort of things that we've just sort of learned, that was in addition to the original sort of what we expected from the product suite.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the lack of information in your in-store can actually be offset with what you're seeing on
Yes.
third party, because you can sort of draw some of these hypotheses, and that's so powerful. For you to like make that kind of a leap, that's amazing, and you can sort of, at least it can be a good idea for a test. Maybe it doesn't apply, but maybe it does.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah.
the ability to test in an online marketplace is so much easier than in restaurant. And it's like, well, let's experiment with additions and deletions on our menu and different. And we haven't gone deep into that space now, but I definitely see that as an opportunity as far as understanding menu mix within our restaurant. So that's been a little fun added piece.
Yeah. So excited for this, Robert. I think we are just at the beginning of where we are, in terms of the overall progress that we can make together, especially going deeper into the ERP stack, letting sort of the insights there actually go and change something on the menu, and more broadly, making sure that Lazy Dog as a brand stays on the offensive as it relates to digital and delivery. I think we are very grateful and excited about this partnership, and continue to be, and it's an absolute delight working with each and every member of your team. So thank you for giving us this opportunity, and also thanks for all of the kind words.
Absolutely. You have a great team, and we very much enjoy working with them on a regular basis. We've learned a lot from them.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Robert.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.